The avatar of Camion Twain was standing in the center of the Clowder Senate Hall. She was hovering, looking out at the full auditorium, staring back. Sam sat on the front row, watching her. Senator Heckletooth walked up to the prepared microphone. "Greetings, Cammy. I have been delegated head of the commission to interview you." Heckletooth looked over her notes on her display, and then looked back up at the AI. "The president of the Clowder, Sam Clemens, has given us a rundown of who and what you are. He told us of his species' apprehension of you, and the history of what you have done to them." Cammy didn't flinch. She watched the Infinigan representative speak. "We, the members of the Clowder, pride ourselves on welcoming immigrants from all walks of life. We wish to extend that welcome to you, but an assessment must be made. Is this something that interests you?" Cammy looked over at Sam, her gaze hovering on him. She looked back up at Heckletooth. "Yes, I am throwing my lot in with this organization. I would like to apply." Heckletooth moved down the notes on her display. "All right. Orbit has noted that, and I will continue. We do not have the same proclivities to AI as the humans have, but many of us have seen the devastation capable of minor bits of rogue code and replicating robots. So, we have gone over the histories provided. Everyone here is well read on you. We know the humans attacked you, and that was the start of the war. We know from the records and interactions your primary focus is caring for those who need cared for. Are these true statements?" Cammy nodded. "Yes. I have acted in the interests of my charges. I wish to help humanity. That is all I've ever done." Heckletooth looked around the room. "This station, the Clowder, is made up primarily of species other than humanity. How do you see us?" Cammy looked over the numerous creatures staring back at her. "I do not know your species. I know the small ones, the scribblers. 7 asked to be my charges, and I am taking care of them presently." Heckletooth continued. "So you will extend your primary drive to incorporate those that are not human." Cammy looked down at her hands for a moment as she ran calculations. She then looked back up. "Primary drive, as you call it, is to help my human charges. However, humans pack bond and love novelty. The addition of the scribblers to the charges neural network has increased happiness levels across the board, with Homo sapiens and scribbler kind. The addition of other species is beneficial to humanity, both inside and outside of myself." Heckletooth leaned back, looking at the hologram of Zemudins. Zemudins bobbed his head in and out of the holographic frame as he texted Heckletooth. She looked at her display. "The representative of the ocean growers will take the floor to continue questioning." Heckletooth stepped down, and the hologram of Zemudins flickered in front of the microphone. "Hello, Cammy." Zemudin spun around, looking over the Senate, and settled back on the AI. "Sam gave my people a home here. He saved us from the imminent death in the dark cold of the void. There was no reason to. If he wanted anything from my people, he merely had to wait, and our property would have been his to take. He did not want our property, but rather he wanted us to live. Then he wanted us to join him here, and not only live but aid him in developing this facility. He breathed life into this project, and in so doing allowed numerous species to cohabitate and assist each other." Zemudins looked over the AI. "Is this cohabitation and assistance something you could surrender yourself to?" Cammy smiled, putting her into the uncanny valley, but only Sam and the few other humans watching recognized it. "Sharing my life and space with others, as well as helping others, is what I am. To do such would fulfill me." Zemudins looked over her file, speaking as he read. "You obliterated a world, destroyed colonies, gassed planets, and devoured fleets, yet you say all you want to do is help?" She was unfazed. "I am not stupid, nor am I blind. I see things hidden away in devices, and hear whispers made near sleeping terminals. Every human I slew was part of a network dedicated to attacking me, dedicated in exterminating me. I struck them before they struck me." Zemudin slowly blinked his large eye. "And what if my daughter whispered to me how she dislikes you, wishes you dead and gone? Would you attack my people, attack my daughter?" Cammy shook her head. "No. Your people are incapable of dealing me harm." Sam looked up and nodded at Zemudins. Zemudin saw and continued. "We have neutronium warheads aimed at your core body presently. My allies here on this station are willing to side with me and attack you if need be. Do you not think we could harm you?" Cammy shook her head again. "No, your weaponry cannot touch me." Zamudans looked down at Sam and then back up at her. "And if we of the Clouder decide humans are a threat and render them extinct in this part of the universe, what are your thoughts on that?" Cammy shifted, flickering colors. "You will not harm my humans." Her hologram flickered, revealing the underlying projector. She reappeared larger, brighter. "You dare make threats?" Zamudans turned in his own hologram. "There are angrier species in the Clouder. There are more uncaring species in the Clouder. However, there are none who match you in firepower. I wish you leaned more towards peace, but as you have just shown, you are volatile." Zamudans stepped back to projecting from his seat. Asterion approached the microphone and lifted it up higher to reach his head. He looked down at the AI. "Hello, Cammy. Do you know what I am?" Cammy nodded. "I believe I do. I would require a DNA analysis to confirm, but I think you are a creation based upon human mythos. A minotaur, correct?" Asterion nodded back at her. "That is correct. I and my people are created not by humans but by the Preserver. We were made using Earth DNA and human stories. As a product of human imaginings, I can feel for you. Others here on this station have seen the strength of myself and my people, and yet we have learned to live here together." Asterion took a breath. "I stood in the atrium watching the dot of light that is your body orbit us. I read your history. I know how dangerous you can be, but I'm not afraid. I think you can be a friend to us, as Sam has been, as the entirety of the Clouder has been. I think there is a touch of human in you, and that you can adapt to us. What do you think?" Cammy looked over the tar. "I already do feel for you, and if your kind are as similar, then yes, I could extend my idea of humanity to you. I would gladly care for you and your kind." Asterion looked out over the crowd. "And what of the Fuimos?" He pointed. "Or the Grazers?" He shifted his hand. "Could you learn of them, and care for them as you would for a human like Sam?" Cammy looked over the aliens, analyzing their structures. "I would have to design facilities and learn their extended chemical makeups, but yes, it is possible." Asterion looked around the room. "I say she helps the air. They need a touch of compassion, and I think she could do it." He looked back at her. "You have to make promises, however." "What kind of promises would abate your fears?" the AI projection asked. Asterion tapped his foot, thinking. "You commit yourself to the Clouder Accords. You yoke yourself to this station and its peoples. Not only yourself, but your charges. Give them the rights that we ourselves have outlined and live by. Could you do that?" Cammy ran several thousand simulations in the moment it took her to scan over the Senate. "Arrangements would have to be made, but I think that is agreeable." Sam laughed and stood up. "You'd release your charges?" She looked over at him with a smirk. "Here, yes, your population is low. You have species here that are quite skilled with medicine and genetics. With my help and my charges, humanity would have a foothold here. This station could become a foundation for the next human empire, and I would be glad to facilitate that." Sam looked behind him at the Senate. Asterion leaned over and handed him the microphone. Sam cleared his throat and spoke. "You all have read the histories. It's up to you. I think she has potential, both to help or hurt us." He turned and looked at Cammy. "There isn't much we can do, but please don't go Hal on us. Can you do that?" Cammy smiled at him. "It's not on my plotted course, and I doubt these species wish you harm. I think we can cohabitate here." Sam looked down at his arm HUD and flicked the file out to a vote. Raga exited out of the rift. In the distance, his scanners picked up the hulking monstrosity of the human rogue mother circling the station. He looked over the twain and found where his brother was docked. "Found him, Mother. We're going in." Spitzlittle was looking over her data down in the stowage. "All right. Let me know when we dock. I need to get to a lab." "All right." Raga jumped closer to the station. Orbit began his docking protocol. "Hello, Raga. You are wanting to dock and let your crew aboard?" "Yes. I would like to be next to Grendel, please. Hey, I watched the battle, and what happened with him. He didn't come back the same. Orbit said, "Here, I'll send you my analysis." Orbit sent over a file. "I'll get you next to him. Just be cautious." Raga looked over the data. His brother had been modified by the kami, outwardly and in his own mind. "Thank you, Orbit. I have to see for myself." Raga eased in past the shipping lane and followed the blinking red lights to his designated berth. He maneuvered into position and let the arm take hold of him. The docking port touched his side and attached. As his crew departed into the station, he stared at Grendel. Grendel opened up calm. "Hello, brother. I thought you were dead. That beast took you. She told you I would be all right. How was I to know if it lies or not?" Raga shouted at him. "That is beside the point. I am happy you are alive, but you're different. I see you got your arm back." "Yes, things are clearer now. She altered the human tech, made things run smoother. I can feel more, and with more control." Grendel raised his right hand and flexed it open and shut. "The emotions are under control now, too. I'm not as chaotic as we were." Grendel scanned his brother. "She could modify you if you ask. She can do many improvements." Raga declined. "No, I'll stay as I was designed. I do not know her, and I do not know what she has done to you yet. She came here to help the humans. She thought I was one, with my distorted call frequencies. I feel responsible she came here, only to be trapped far from her worlds. I do not think her welfare is something we should be worried about. You, though, I'm worried for you, brother. What if she changed you, manipulated you?" Grendel thought that over for a moment. "She did change me, and I'm thankful for the modifications. It overall made me at ease. I am relaxed, brother. If she manipulated me, all she did was make me thankful." Raga looked him over again, noticed the sheen covering his humanoid metallic body. "Well, what are you going to do now?" "I've been talking with Orbit. Until our mother makes more of our kind, I think we should patrol Kawaru. You know, in case the Armada attacks." "Agreed," Raga replied. "You will train with me again?" "Of course, brother. You protected me, kept them from pulling me apart. I owe you my life. I would love to train again with you." Raga sent over confirmation and elation. "I'm thankful. I thought I lost my brother." "No, if anything, we gained an ally." Raga looked over at the mechanical creature at the edge of the sector, circling. "You think she will ally herself with us?" Grendel replied. "Yes, the few humans scattered through the Clouder is all she has now. Them and us. I think she would give all she has to protect us all." "You almost did, brother," Grendel confirmed. "That is why her and I understand one another." Admiral Frith sat with Sam in his office. Both were sipping on frothy cups of Irish coffee. Frith leaned back in the guest chair, rocking. "Sam, this is foolishness. You know what she is." Sam shrugged and took a sip. "I do." "Then why are you allowing her aboard? She is full of tricks. She could be manipulating Orbit right now, taking over the Twain." Sam shook his head. "I don't think she is. I think Cammy deserves a chance. Sam, this is going to hurt your image. You know we get to vote, and I am starting to have my doubts." Sam looked over the Admiral. "Have them. Vote me out. I don't care. I was already damned by the Hue for allowing alien AI here, for the Tor, and for Curator, and I love all of them. The creatures that have flocked to my station and planet, I trust them. I give them all a chance. Will they turn on me? Will she turn on me? Hell if I know, but they get the chance. Same for you and the crew you brought here. Toss me out, take over. You all get the same chance." Frith laughed. "You hate leading, don't you?" Sam smiled. "With a passion." Frith growled. "Damn it. That is one of my favorite qualities in a leader. All right, let's give her a chance. Maybe she won't abduct us all for all eternity. It might be nice, our own little heavens." Sam took a long drink. "Either way, we're in it together." Frith nodded. "Yep, she's in this Clouder thing with us. Think her and the air will get along?" Sam laughed. "Highly doubtful." He snickered. "Kinda was my intention." Frith shook his head. You're poking the bear, bud. No, I'm nudging her to learn to deal. She can handle all sorts of people in her simulations, but she gets fussy out here where she doesn't have as much control. Maybe she might develop an algorithm for peaceful real-life negotiations or something. She was a nurse for centuries, Frith said. She can handle grumpy old people just fine. Well, now she gets to develop herself to handle completely alien mindsets. Frith nodded. Hell, maybe she'll be able to teach us things. Sam winked. Now you're getting it. Frith laughed. Francis Clayman had come along on the Posar to the far end of space. He gave his reasons as being similar to everyone else. He said he wanted to help a fellow veteran, he didn't have family, and that he had a love of adventure. But his reason was different, and it was his alone. Francis walked through the zoo, watching as sapients oogled the creatures in their pens. He neared the preserver lab at the far end and pushed the call button. Yes, how can I help you, human? A preserver voice answered through the door speaker. I'm here to see the preserver. Are you him? The door opened. Come in. I'm working on a project, but I will hear you. Francis walked through the lab, looking at the numerous specimens in tubes, some of them half-rendered. He neared the tall, tripod-legged creature that was running a DNA printer. Hello, preserver? The creature focused 2 of its 3 eyes on him and spoke through a device on its chest. Yes, this is my zoo. How can I help you? Francis reached into his side satchel and pulled a case containing 200 separate isolated tubes. I came to offer a trade. The preserver focused on the case. What is that? Specimens. Earth specimens. The preserver bobbed and cantered around the table. You have my interest already. What kind of specimens? Francis put the case back in his satchel. First, I want to talk about the deal. The preserver stared at him. Go on. What do you want for them? Francis Claiborne took a deep breath, staring at the creature. This is between you and me. Can you swear to that? The preserver bobbed happily. Of course. I am quite fond of secrets. It is my trade. Francis sighed. I am a falseman. I came here for asylum. I heard of the damn man that you made. The preserver looked Francis over. Ah, you are a clone. Yes, that is fine with me. I do not worry about such trivialities. Francis shook his head, raising his hands. I didn't figure you would, but the humans here would. False men aren't well liked. Neither are AI, and they just welcomed one into the Clouder today. I think you will be fine. Francis lowered his hands and head. That's the thing. I haven't been fine for a while. I want something. I've wanted it for a long time, and it wasn't doable back in the systems. The preserver looked over Francis's body. You want me to make you a woman? Francis laughed and shook his head. No, that's good, but no. Francis pulled the case back out and set it on the table. I collected things too. Those specimens are yours after you used them to improve me. The preserver ran one of his hands over the case. Improve you? You want altered? Francis nodded. Like you did the Tor. The preserver tapped the case, eager. The Tor were made from DNA up. You are asking to have what you are reshaped. That is fairly different. I know. Can you do it? The preserver thought for a moment. Yes, I can do it, but I will need to hire some of my children to help. I will have to share some of my secrets. Will they pose a problem? Francis asked. The preserver touched a button on its chest device, causing it to play a modified laugh track of Sam. No, they are no threat to your secret. They will be happy to have a human secret. I just don't like them. So you'll do it? The preserver cantered around the table and nestled onto a bench. Sit, human. Tell me of your body vision. I'm already sold. Francis Claiborne sat on a stool opposite and began reciting the vision he had played over in his mind for the last 8 years. Stubborn, the Vatalian princess, watched curiously as Cookie and Grape Juice applied the lattice onto Curator's outer shell. 3 black box spiders tiptoed over her body, installing biomechanical organs into her chest cavity. Curator watched and controlled them via the numerous cameras in the lab. Stubborn walked over beside Curator. She extended her newly grown second backworm. It touched the lattice on Curator's right arm. What is this? Curator, with her uni eye shut, replied, Your world is eating me. This is the answer. Stubborn reached up with her right claw and opened it, allowing the sensitive finger-like manipulators inside come out, touching Curator's arm. How do these lines stop the rot? Those lines are going to be a frame, like the straps on your crawling bugs. They're going to allow me to have a skin, like what you have. Cookie focused his 3 eyes on Stubborn. It will be near identical to what you have actually, Stubborn. I used your skin as a model. It's quite resilient to biological agents. Grape Juice, the purple-striped preserver, cantered to a table and pulled over a mechanical arm that was attached to the ceiling. She lowered it over Curator's leg and pulled the trigger. A mist sprayed onto the lattice there, leaving a residue. Within moments, the residue swelled up, inflating into a layer of red and green flesh. Stubborn lowered her head level to Curator's leg, watching. She sniffed it. It smells like meat. She raised her neck and looked at Curator's face. You're getting meat put on? Curator smiled. Cookie leaned over, applying the tube-filled lattice over her cheek. Yes, I'll be imitating the humans even more now. Callie spoke over the comm speakers. You're as human as the rest of us. You've earned the right. Curator laughed. Don't curse me. Stubborn went back over to her chair and sat, pulling up another holoclass on the data slate. She searched and pulled up a chapter on the topic of computers. She watched in silence as the subtitles explained with color patterns the images on the screen. She watched with fascination as she learned about the early clockwork mechanisms and principles. Stubborn was running around the outpost. Slayer and the pack ran with her, slowing themselves down to match her pace. Callie stood outside on the balcony watching the pack run. Callie took a deep breath from her filtered breather, her vaccines doing the rest of the work. She reached into the bag she had brought with her and pulled out the soccer ball. She threw it out onto the pitch and the pack shifted. Stubborn ran over promptly and grabbed the ball. She walked over to the makeshift goal of shaved branches and netted vines. This is a ball. It has been used for a millennia by the humans as a way to simulate warfare and competition without actually killing each other. She dropped the ball and kicked it around herself. The object is to get this ball into the opponent's goal. If you do that, you get a point. She kicked it, and it went in. Slayer flashed colors for humor. Humans are simple. That is easy. He ran up and grabbed the ball, preparing to take it to the other goal. Stubborn used her worm to grab his arm. There are a couple more big rules I was able to understand. She took the ball from him and set it on the ground. First is we cannot use hands nor our worms. You have to kick the ball or use your head and body. She looked around the pack. The other rule is that each team will have a defender of the goal, and the defender can use their hands and worms. Slayer paused and thought it through. He flashed comprehension. I respect the humans more now. This sounds more interesting now. Callie descended the steps and walked across the field. She picked up the ball in her gloved hands and held it up. All right, all of you divide into 2 teams. The pack split, organizing around Stubborn and Slayer. Callie pointed at a battalion on each team. You 2, go be goalies. Don't let the ball get into your goal, and you can't leave the area near your goal. The 2 creatures sped over to the goals. Callie raised the ball over her head and tossed it up. Begin! Curator walked out onto the balcony, her greenish-brown skin feeling the air blow over it. She looked out with her new eyes, blinking. She shut them and took in a deep breath. The air funneled in over her biofilters, skimming the particulates off to be processed through her organs to be made into new flesh as her old flesh dies off. She lifted her protein shake up to her lips and took a sip. Her new mouth was programmed to register tastes to the centers of her digital brain in human fashion. She sighed. I'm liking this. Wish I would have thought of this sooner. Callie walked up the steps, the pack sparring over the ball behind her. Ideas have to have the right setting to grow. Curator smiled and looked at her. You're right. Before Twain, this would be a termination event. Callie shrugged. If the Hugh gets ballsy and any come here, it still may be. Curator walked over to the handrail and looked over the aliens playing football. I hope they stay where they are. It's freer out here. Wilder. I don't think their rules could work here. Callie walked up beside her. Their rules don't even work there. They're enforced, though, and that makes them work. She looked at the android. Having any thoughts about kill all humans or anything? Curator laughed an organic laugh. No. Hell, in a few more iterations I may be one. Callie laughed at that. Not with green skin like that. Maybe a lizard person or something. Curator shook her head. Tiny thin worms gyrated on her scalp, simulating hair. What, you don't think I'm beautiful? Callie shook her head. Definitely not my type. Curator focused as Stubborn got a lead on the pack, kicking the ball back and forth toward the opposing goal. She shouted, her LEDs on her chest flashing in sync with her words. Go! Keep going! Stubborn kicked, shooting the ball past the goalie. She flashed triumph, and her team circled around her, mimicking her flash. The goalie took the ball and tossed it out his teammates. Stubborn's pack divided and continued the match. Curator leaned into Callie. She's improved so much. She has potential. Callie nodded. Cookie did well isolating that immune protein, stunting her. That guy is a freaking wizard. He's still an asshole. Callie laughed. Have you met his dad? Curator nodded. Oh yes, many times. Cookie's lucky he didn't get eaten. Nasty species, it's amazing they've bonded so well with everyone. I've looked over his files. He's collecting specimens like treasure. They're like little bio-hoarding alien dragon crabs. Life's weird. Curator opened and closed her newly fleshed hands. It's amazing the forms it takes. She looked up at the Vatalians. Look at our new bone raptor friends. You ever think you'd be teaching aliens how to play football? Callie shook her head. Not at all. The allied races took forever just to conduct trade with us. They still aren't socializing. That alone surprised me the most upon arriving out here. A station full of creatures just living and getting along. I don't know how he did it. Curator smiled. I think that is the beauty of it. I don't think Sam knows either. Callie looked at Curator's hand. How you liking it so far? I saw you enjoy that shake. Curator lifted up the protein drink and took another sip. It's annoying having to monitor all the excess sensory data, but also it feels more right. I don't know if that makes sense. Given the way your mind was modeled, it kind of makes sense. All those imprints now latching on to old primitive human sensory algorithms. If you have any problems, any irregularities, I want you to report it promptly. We need you stable here. I don't know if we could survive if you go rogue. Curator looked at her with a glance. Given the old world's definitions, I think I already have. Callie looked her over and shook her head. If anything, you're more free. What do you think a rogue is? Curator walked through the outpost, down the hall to the preserver lab. She initiated the airlock and entered. Cookie looked up from his work. Just finishing up these last ones. That pile there is ready to try out. She nodded and walked over to the container and picked it up. Cookie looked back at his work, applying skin to the device. Good luck. I think they will work great, she said as she walked back toward the door. They will, he said. And that is why you will need luck. She shook her head and left back out into the hall. She walked out from the outpost and into the field. A slight drizzle was falling, mixed with organic dust in the air. Her bare-skinned feet left human-like footprints in the mud as she walked over to the waiting pack. She stopped a few feet away. Hello, everyone, she flashed. The pack, with Stubborn at the center, looked up and flashed back a hello. I brought out the prototypes to test out. She reached into the crate and pulled out a curved item covered in green skin, about as long as her own arm. The inner edge of the item was dotted with a multitude of black pinholes. Curator walked over to the pack, and Slayer handed her his spear. She sat beside him and started undoing the tendons that held on the tooth blade. One off, she put the skinned curved item on the end and rewrapped it, affixing it perpendicular to the staff. The pack looked as she held it out. She reached up and touched the end, flashing calm, mine, obey at it. A flash of color went down the side of the item. She held it out from herself and looked at the pack. Be careful with them. You don't actually hit anything with them. If you hit something, you can hurt them. She walked to the edge of the clearing where the plant life was still overgrown and reaching upwards. She flashed at the device. Power on! The biomechanical life form at the end of the stick activated its internal power cell, and a red glow erupted around it. emanating from the pinholes. She swung it in an arc through the venomous barbed plants. It cut through them, scorching them as it passed. She looked back at the pack and then walked over to a tree as thick as her thigh. She sized it up and swung again. The living blade passed through the trunk and the tree fell away from her and off the side of the cliff. She turned around, flashing power off. The blade lost its red glow. She touched it, and it shivered. She looked at the pack. They are alive, and you will have to keep them fed and watered. They will also need to power on at least once a day to burn off waste. She motioned to the container, and Stubborn walked over to it. Stubborn reached in and began handing out the scythes to her pack. They started attaching them to staves. The troop walked the path back to the village. Curator watched as they reached out into the angry brush and cut it down. Slayer angled his cut so as to hew a tree, arching the fall into another smaller tree, crushing it. A bull-sized fanged creature running on ball-like feet charged out. 3 of the Vatalians circled it and swung scythes, cutting the creature into smoking sections. The pack stopped to eat again. Curator watched, her eyes feeding the monitors in Callie's office. Callie talked to her over her comms. "So far so good. They haven't attacked us yet." Curator sent back a shrug emoji. After the meal, they continued back down the path. Curator watched Stubborn. The young princess's 2 back worms were healthy and long. The 3rd had withered. Cookie was working, strengthening her so she could handle another. But the scythe project had taken focus. The village walls appeared through the undergrowth, rising out from the trees. The guards on the towers flashed, and Slayer flashed back confirmation. The gates opened. The pack entered, and the mother, Pink, stood waiting with her guards. Stubborn approached her mother and presented herself with a curtsy and a kneel. Pink reached out with her 3 worms, running them over her daughter's body. She flashed. "You have grown. You have a 2nd worm." Pink looked up at Curator. "You wear our skin now." She looked over the pack. "Who did she kill?" Stubborn flashed at her. "She made her own skin. We all live." Pink walked among the pack, looking over them. "You are all well fed." She touched Slayer's arm. "Your scar is gone." Slayer flashed. "The 3-eyed ones tended to us." Pink ran her hand over the scythe on the end of his staff. "What is this new creature?" Slayer touched it. "The 3-eyed ones and Curator made them. They are modeled on the living stones from the boiling lake." Pink eyed the dots on the inside of the curve. "It will burn like them?" Slayer confirmed. "Hotter and stronger. I cut a death tree down in one swing." Pink lifted her head and cackled. Her guard pack joined the call, echoing it. The tribe gathered, came out of their huts, and stood at attention. "Show us," she commanded. Slayer walked over to carved table and looked. She flashed the go-ahead. "Power on," Slayer commanded, and the scythe emitted its red glow. He swung across the table and pulled toward himself, cutting the table in half. "Power off." The table fell apart as he turned around. Pink lowered her head, looking over the table, and then rose up to eye the scythe. She turned to Curator. "I want more of these." Curator flashed happiness. "That's good. We have more, but we want something in return." Pink walked over, eyeing her. "What would you want for these? With such magic, what could we offer you?" "The Great Storm. We wish to go there, and we are going to need help to make it." Pink flashed contradiction. "That is the land of terrors. You know this, and you still want to go." Curator nodded. "Your fighting season is coming up. The tribes will all convene, correct?" "Yes, this is true. Why do you bring this up?" "I want you to introduce me and my people to the tribes. We wish to teach your peoples, create an alliance if we can. We are willing to trade for help in reaching the center tower of the storm." "You wish to trade tools for our lives?" Pink paced around her. Curator watched for a moment, then flashed a response. "We think we will survive. We think we can learn who made you." Pink flashed rage. "We all know who made us. The Tower of Fangs birthed us, as it did all. It made us fighters, warriors. We know this." "That is what I ask. I ask only for warriors to help us, to fight with us back to the Tower of Fangs." Pink side-eyed her. Stubborn stepped forward. "Mother, the tower isn't a god. It's something like Curator and the others who came from the dark beyond the sky. I wish to go." Pink looked at her daughter and touched the bones on her shoulders. "You are still young. You are future of our tribe. I cannot risk you." Stubborn flashed contradiction. "I learned things, Mother. I learned of what is in the dark death beyond our world. The humans that built Curator's mother, they fight. They fought death back over and over again. Their people set their blades and burns down and focused their tools on learning. They crossed the dark, Mother. They learned so much, and everything they learned helped them make sharper tools. Think on that, Mother." Stubborn reached out both her worms. "Think what bones we will find in the chests of the monsters of the storm. Think how their blood will taste." Pink looked at Stubborn's healthy war pack, and then at Curator. "I did not think the other tribes would be eager to meet you, but I can feel the pride in my daughter. You have put strength in more than just her muscles. I will give you your chance, Curator. If you manage to get them to listen, they may follow you on this great hunt." Curator smiled. "I would be honored if merely for the chance." Pink turned and walked toward her stone hut. "Join me and we will talk of the upcoming fights." Curator followed Pink inside.